morning, Britain. 74 years ago today, former British rifleman Vic Gregg was being held in the German city of Dresden as a prisoner of war when Allied forces dropped 3,900 tons of high explosive bombs, killing thousands of civilians and causing utter destruction.
The 99-year-old has written a book about witnessing and surviving this horrific attack and believes those who ordered it could be guilty of a war crime.
Well, we're joined now by Vic Gregg, as well as historian and broadcaster Dan Snow, who visited Dresden with Victor last year. Victor, we've talked to you before on this programme, haven't you? And it's always fascinating to hear what you have to say. Although, even though I feel that we've talked to you and know you, I didn't know so much of what you've now put down in this book about what you went through in Dresden. You were a prisoner of war there, weren't you? And suddenly, the skies opened and hell was unleashed. Talk us through what happened.
Well, I'll talk you through what happened, but it's just as well to remember that if they hadn't come over, this morning that time ago, I would have been marched out into a courtyard, strapped to a ring in the wall, and shot.
You were kind of effectively on death row.
Yeah, I was due to be shot that morning.
Yeah.
So, having got that over, what was it like? Well, Harry and myself, Harry was always an optimist, and he's always taking the mickey and laughing. And he always said, like, something will turn up. I don't really remember myself being dispirited, and we was in amongst hundreds of these itinerant people who were all due for the chop. And then it was about 10 o'clock in the evening when the mosquitoes come over and dropped their flares, and we could see that through the glass cupola in the roof. So we immediately knew that we was in trouble. It was bedlam. It was bedlam. People, because some of these incendiaries broke through the cupola. All the glass come down. Anybody who was underneath that, they were pierced and caught alight with this stuff.
So the bombs had phosphorus in them?
Yeah, well, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, it caught everything alight, and the place is full of smoke, because at that point the building was practically undamaged. And it was towards the end of the raid, after about 40 minutes, when the blockbuster landed outside and destroyed the building what we was in. And of course that also killed 4/5 of everybody who was in there.
I understand that as that exploded and destroyed the wall, you were thrown 50 feet.
Yeah, it just picked me up. You don't know about all this. You're unconscious practically as you're flying through the air.
But that meant you could get out of the building as well, though, couldn't you? So
because I recovered consciousness after, it must have been a very, very short time. And then I got all the dirt out of my eyes, because I was still quite strong and able. And I went over, and Harry, of course, was dead. He was sitting against the wall where I left him, and he'd taken the full force of the. And as I got out of the building with, I think there was only about 20 or 30 people left out of a couple of hundred. So the building collapsed, like everything else. We came out of that and we were surrounded by fire. But it wasn't really, at that point in the raid, at the first wave, it was just like an ordinary bombing raid. Bombing raid, it was a bit worse than that, but it wasn't, it didn't reach the proportions that it read after the second raid.
So talk us through that. So you're out of the prison now, but you couldn't escape. You couldn't run away and think, this is my chance.
Rounded up.
You got rounded up.
Well, you couldn't, because first of all, of course, you was partially still concussed.
I bet, yeah.
You don't get 4,000 bomb burst about 50 yards away from you, and all of a sudden you jump up to a dance. Everything's blurred.
So you're staying where you are, but talk us through what happened over the next couple of days and those waves that you were talking about.
Wave
and how,
after
Well, the second wave, by the time the second wave came over, a lot of the people who had survived the first wave were crawling out of their holes in the ground, and they were on the surface, or you know, you couldn't do much because everything, the fire was growing all the time, and you still got bits of building coming collapsing. And then when the second wave came over, of course, these people are trapped out in the open. And the second wave, of course, the bombs were much bigger. If you have a stick of incendiaries, say about 4 inches wide and about 2 or 3 foot long, dropping in like clusters of 100, and then compare that with a 4,000-pound bomb full of napalm, which when it hits, anything within about 200 or 300 yards gets incinerated. And who are they incinerating? This is the thing. There's not a uniform inside.
And this is your point, isn't it, as
This is
well,
my
part
point.
of it?
This is my point.
This was an appalling action.
It was aimed specifically at civilians, and you've got to ask yourself, well, who were the civilians? It wasn't the able-bodied men. They were in the army.
Dan, you're a historian. It's interesting to hear this very vivid account of what he lived through and his feelings about what the plan was behind this attack. As a historian, have you got to the bottom of what the theory behind Dresden was? Was there a sort of a...
Well, it was seen as it was seen as a corridor through which German reinforcements were heading to the Eastern Front against the Soviets. So it was seen as a sort of military target. It was also seen that Churchill wanted to demonstrate the might of the RAF. So when the Soviets advanced, they would see that the British and Americans were not to be messed with. So it was all about the people on the ground at Dresden were caught between the military necessity of the Allies, but also some of the big sort of strategic power plays going on. But what it meant was they completely destroyed. I went with Victor last year, and it is one of the most beautiful cities of Europe, and it was almost completely destroyed, and tens of thousands of people killed.
And people are meant to feel that in a way it was a war crime, don't you? That
it's a manner in which these people died. Unless you was actually there, you can't possibly. If I tell you, your brain won't accept it. I mean.
And it's affected you.
You never saw. There was no sign of any children because the children melt. Their bones were too tender, and they just melted. And if you got in, and nearer you got to the centre of the sea, then you started. You didn't even see skeletons. It was all a sort of a jelly with odd bits floating about, not floating because.
And this has stayed with you, hasn't it? This has stayed with you throughout the whole of your life.
Well, yeah. You don't witness women and children flying through the air alive, being dragged into these vortex because of the power of the wind. Yeah, as the fire got fiercer and fiercer, so the wind, there was more air needed to feed that fire, so it's rushing in as soon as it's been burnt up there from the ground. It's rushing in and it's making this huge sort of black pillar, which must, I don't know, it was like an enormous tree trunk, only 100 times bigger.
Dan, when you read the book, when you hear what Victor has to say, the total annihilation it seemed that they were trying to achieve of Dresden certainly feels like there was an ulterior motive here that wasn't just tactical, it wasn't just about advancing the cause, but actually there was something a bit more underhand about it, and sort of the suggestion that it could be seen as a war crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what
you do, yeah, and Victor was there on the ground.
And I've taken a lot of stick over it.
What are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, I think what the Western Allies were desperately hoping time and again they could win this war by battering the German civilian morale, that somehow they'd rise up against Hitler and they'd get rid of it. You know, they believe if you crush. And that's what Hitler thought with the Blitz on London and Coventry and elsewhere, is that actually punish civilians enough, they will rise up. You break their spirit and they'll rise up. So that was the thinking behind it. But of course it didn't work, and eventually it just got more and more and more. And Dresden was the sort of final experiment in this just unimaginable, firestorm.
And ideally, Victor, you'd like this to be put into schools, wouldn't you, for school children and students to understand a little bit more?
It's not up to me, is it?
No, but that's what you would like, though. You think that they should be talked about more? Would you
I
not?
mean, you've got to remember that book there is confined to what I experienced and what in my very small perimeter. That's why it's so small, because you can talk about a bomb dropping or people catching a light. You can only mention it once. That takes a paragraph. If it was a book about Dresden, then Dan would produce a book with about 300 pages.
Well,
He would.
it's no less powerful, Victor, for its size. It's incredibly moving, and I think
I'm
young
right as
people
I
should
remember.
read
I'm not a
so they
writer.
know.
I'm not a writer. I'm not an author.
He's a star. Every time I go on TV with Victor, it's always the number. You know, it's always the thing that trends. It's always
I can only write about what I remember as it falls out of what I don't have to invent.
No,
villains.
undoubtedly. It's incredibly vivid, though.
Every word that I write, it's happened.
Yeah.
And to see people, you've got to imagine yourself sitting in a cellar, you can't get out, and it's getting hotter and hotter, and then and if you're still conscious, you're seeing everybody, their skin cracking open.
Oh.
Can I go on, or everybody's going to fight?
Well, Victor,
it's
it's
very
all
early
there
stage
in the
to count
book,
the book.
and I think people, need to hear your story because you lived it, and it's a
Yes,
great
it would be
pleasure
a
to have you
wonderful
here
thing to
again.
think that as I get older and as the curtain comes down, that at least I've done some good towards alleviating the horror that the war between nations brings.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit of a realist. They're still doing it. They're still doing it.
It's
These things
so
are
good to
important
talk to
messages,
you.
though, aren't they? Victor,
Yeah.
thank you very much for joining us again. It's
Thank
lovely to
you.
see you. Dan, thank you for coming.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.